What's happening, all you crazy fun people? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellows. My name is Tyler, obviously, and I'm joined here with Cameron. Cam, how you doing?
I am doing well.
Doing well. As you notice, we are missing the third fella who's joining us in spirit right behind the microphone. Lucas, we hope you're having a good time out in California.
Yes. Hope everything's finishing up well out there for you.
Hope you're getting enough Starbucks out there because definitely can't have that anywhere else. So welcome back to another episode again. In last episode, we went over the fellas mock draft 2.0.
Yes, I think first 8 rounds.
The first 8 rounds of 2.0. And in this episode, we will be finishing up that draft. Sure. We may not be going into such analysis as we did the last episode, but we will highlight some of those players that we took in the later rounds and just kind of share something about them that we like, whether it's value or we see them as a sleeper or whatever it may be. But before we get into that, normally in the show, we do a segment called Hot Take Tie. And there's really no hot takes to do when you do a mock draft, right? So I thought, you know what, maybe this might be the opportune time. Is that a word? I don't think
opportune time. Yeah,
opportune time.
That works. I'm a teacher. That works.
Yes. Boom. To monologue, because that is also a staple of our little show. Lucas, monologued about the Lions backfield. You monologued about Miles Sanders
and Joe Mixon.
That's right. That was
both ways.
You started off. You kicked off the monologue. So, like I said, in the spirit of this monologue staple, I too shall dabble. I'll dabble in the monologues, and my monologue will be about Davante Adams. And this pains me as a Vikings fan to talk about a Packer player like this, but there is something happening right now in a lot of mock drafts and a lot of other noise, we'll say, that Davante Adams is now slowly falling out of the first round because of the uncertainty with Rodgers. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that this is a crime against fantasy football, okay? Davante Adams is what a lot of people would say is a top 2 wide receiver, and he ain't 2. And, as a Vikings fan, I don't want to say that he's the best, but I have to say it. He is the best receiver in the game. At least top 3. He's just that good. And I know nothing will prove that besides the cold hard facts and the numbers. So I threw together some numbers for all of y'all to hopefully convince you just that even if Rodgers leaves, Davante Adams is still a top 5 at the bare minimum wide receiver in fantasy football. In the past 3 seasons, 2018, 2019, and 2020, Davante Adams has played in only 41 games. Yes, that raises some question marks here and there. How healthy can he stay? Because he's missed at least 1 game every year. But just listen to this. In 41 games, he's totaled 309 receptions on 331 targets, 3,757 receiving yards, and 36 touchdowns. Okay? Now, I'm going to take out 2019 because in 2019, he only played 1 game, okay? Here are his totals minus 2019. 302 receptions, 318 targets, 3,664 yards, and 35 touchdowns. If you need some help with this, his season averages come out to be 103 receptions a year with 110 targets, 1,252 yards, and 12 touchdowns, okay? If we put this together with the fantasy scoring chart, that is 300 fantasy points each year. That is high. That's like high tier 1 superstar elite running back numbers in a wide receiver. And yes, it's more likely for a receiver to get those numbers than a running back. But there's only 1 or 2 receivers that it actually happens to.
Every year, yeah.
Every year. And Davante has done that for the past 2 years. Now, I want to break this down to an even smaller scale for you. His game averages. He's averaging 7.5 catches a game, okay, on 8 targets. So drops are not an issue. He averages 92 yards a game, and he scores almost every single game.
22 points a game at minimum.
There is a 87% chance that Davante Adams scores at least 1 touchdown in every game that he plays.
That's ridiculous.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. So, like I said, yes, if Rodgers drops out, his value drops a little bit, but he is still a first-round pick. When you are a receiver with those kind of stats, it doesn't matter who's throwing you the ball. You will still get open. You will still see the ball thrown your way, okay? And as of today, there was a report from a source that came out and said Rodgers was not on the opt-out list for the season. So as of right now, Rodgers is still playing. And you know what that means? He should be a first-round pick. I don't want to see any more of this dropping out of round 1 into round 2 nonsense with Davante. He is wide receiver 1, and for good reason,
yes.
Okay? Now, we all have the same opinion in the fellas that Davante is still a first-round pick.
Yes.
But like I said, some people just need to hear this. And I'm not – it just, like I said, has to be said. So there, I end my little monologue. I hope I convinced some of you to stop just neglecting Davante Adams. It's not a bad pick if you take him late first round. Yes. It is not a bad pick.
No.
So anyway, we will now get back into the rest of our mock draft. And I know it's been a whirlwind of an episode so far, but I promise you we will get through this, okay? So we went through the first 8 rounds of the mock draft last episode. So now we will just mention who we kind of took in rounds 9 to, I guess that would be 16.
16.
That's the standard roster size. So Cameron.
Yes.
You want to mention who you took in your last rounds?
For sure. So I went Damian Harris, Michael Gallup, Baker Mayfield, Cole Beasley, Marvin Jones, Gerald Everett. Oh, so I waited till around 14, pick 9 to take my only tight end. And then I took the Tampa defense and Ryan Suckup.
I have to say something though real quick. I'm pretty sure I have influenced you enough to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense
every single
time. So I have to,
for sure
take that as my.
I'll give that one to you. So I'm going to highlight 2 players real quick. Yeah. I'm going to highlight Damian Harris. Ty had talked about him a little bit earlier. There's some news coming out that he's going to for sure be that workhorse. Obviously, if Cam Newton's there, touchdown rate goes way down.
Yep.
If Mac Jones steps in at all, those touchdowns are going to go to Damian Harris.
Yep.
He was incredibly efficient last year and ran the ball, I want to say 200-plus times.
About, yeah.
And so if he keeps that up as being my running back 4, that's what I'm really excited about. And then the other guy that I'm going to talk about is Michael Gallup. Now, Michael Gallup is a guy who over the last 2 seasons has had 100 targets each year. He's had at least 850 yards. He had 850 last year, and then he had 1,100 the year before. And he's had at least 5 touchdowns. So this guy is going out. I got him in round 10, almost round 11. And he can still put up 1,100 yards a game with Dak coming back healthy. He put up 100 targets last year without Dak.
Oh, my goodness.
And so this is a guy that I think could really help the back end of your team. Now, his receptions are down in the 60s, 50s, 55, 60s. So he's not – like his catch rate's a lot lower.
Yeah.
But still, for a guy who puts up 100 targets to get him in the 10th round, that's something that I was really excited about.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 guys that I was very happy about. Cole Beasley was another one, but Lucas had talked about him the last a couple episodes ago about he's a sleeper that he really likes. Baker Mayfield's a guy I'm really high on. I got him at quarterback 12.
Yeah.
And then Gerald Everett is another tight end I'm happy.
The fanciest tight end in the league.
I was happy to take him in round 14. And that was mainly because Tyler took my guy, Dallas Goedert, who I was looking at round 9. And so I was forced to wait. And then I just kind of was like, you know what? I'm not taking any of them. And so I just kind of punted on tight end to the very end.
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, you'll be able to trade for a tight end because one, you're Cam, and two, you have so many other like position value elsewhere that you can dump some off for a relatively decent tight end.
I know. So, one of my 9 wide receivers on my roster.
You took 9 wide receivers.
I think that's what it was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 7 wide receivers. My bad.
Oh,
7 wide receivers.
I was like, are we doing a dynasty mock draft here or something?
So. 3, 5, 7. My bad.
Oh, geez.
9 would have been ridiculous. Yeah. I don't even think I could have 9, but 7's still pretty good.
Yeah, I think you would need like only 3 running backs and a quarterback, and then maybe, but man,
my bad.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And like I said, you have so much more flexibility with trading and dropping, because there is a chance that some of those guys in the later rounds don't pan out. Yeah. And there's a tight end that pops out of nowhere. Like, let's say a Cole Kmet or an Adam Troutman, Anthony Ferkser.
And I'm going to be honest, I don't really like taking running backs in the late rounds that I don't think are going to get started. So there's a lot of guys, and I know you're one of them that like to take those handcuff running backs. That's just not how I like to do it. I like to have guys that I know have potential that can be in my starting lineup week after week.
Right. And if I take a handcuff, it's just one.
Yes.
I don't want them as my running back 4 or 5. You'd never want to bank on a player getting hurt to have them.
Then you're just a bad human being.
Right. You're just awful at wishing ill will on people.
Exactly.
No, so that was the rest of Cam's draft. I'll run through the rest of Lucas's picks, and I think maybe we will just share who we like out of his. So in the 9th round, he grabbed Michael Carter, the running back for the Jets. The 10th round was Russell Gage, who figures to be the wide receiver 2 in Atlanta now that Julio's out. He picked up Elijah Moore, the wide receiver for the Jets.
2 Jets players for those counting at home.
Yeah, I like both of them. They're going to be good guys, but 2 Jets players? I don't know.
Bad juju.
Yeah. Bad juju. Yeah. So that was round 11 for him with Elijah Moore. The 12th round, he took Chuba Hubbard.
Greatest name in football right now.
The best name in football. Goodness. As solely a handcuff for McCaffrey, and I don't blame that at all. 13th round, he took Jonnu Smith, who recently signed with the Patriots. Round 14, he took his guy Daniel Jones, who he recently
was hyping up to me, trying to convince me that I should be taking him.
Yeah, he had a little monologue a couple episodes ago on Daniel Jones, and then his kicker was Young Hoo Koo, and it is noted and worth mentioning that we are big Young Hoo Koo fans on the podcast. And then in the 16th round, just crapshoot for defensive picks at this pick.
He was just second to last defense off the board.
Yeah. So, Cam, who I think maybe I'll ask you this. Between Russell Gage and Elijah Moore, who do you think will have the better season between the two?
I'm going to go Russell Gage, I think. Just he's on a better offense. I still don't trust that Jets offense. And the fact that Elijah Moore's probably going to be the second target on a really, really bad team, that just scares me. I mean, he could obviously break out, but I think I like Russell Gage more. I think there's a reason he went around ahead of Elijah Moore. And, I mean, he put up pretty good numbers when Julio was gone, so I don't think that that's going to go away. So I would probably take a chance on Russell Gage before Elijah Moore.
Yeah. I'm kind of torn between them because Russell Gage kind of showed out a little bit last year. I mean, there were stats saying that he was on pace for, what was it, like 100 receptions, 100 targets or something, and 1,400 yards or something.
And it was only the last like 4 games of the year.
Yeah.
So we were extrapolating from.
Right. And now that Julio's out, he has an opportunity in front of him to produce versus Elijah Moore, where there's been some great news coming out of camp about him and where the Jets took him to, because the Jets actually could have taken another receiver in the first round, but they opted to wait because they knew they could get Elijah Moore in the second. So Lucas had also mentioned that Cole Beasley actually went after
Yeah,
Yeah,
I took
you
him.
took him.
I took him after both Russell Gage and Elijah Moore.
Yeah, and Lucas said had he seen Cole Beasley on the big board when he picked, he would have taken Beasley over Moore. So it's really up to your own judgment and your own opinion.
Because these guys are all flyers. These guys are either going to pan out, they're going to be, or they're going to be, and you're going to drop them. So that's kind of what you're getting at when you're getting these 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 round wide receivers.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess let me hit on Michael Carter real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The fellas are also really big fans of Michael Carter.
To the moon!
His value will go to the moon at some point this season. It just seems like the offense is going to be set up for him in some way. Tevin Coleman is the guy that projects to be probably the week 1 starter. But Tevin Coleman has a track record of never being able to hold down the running back 1 duty. And Michael Carter was arguably like the 3rd best running back in this draft class, according to some people. So there's reason to be excited for Michael Carter if you're a Jets fan. And he's what I think is the prototypical 49er running back, the speedy, great hands, and shifty running back.
We have cautious optimism.
Yes.
Like, we're not taking him above round 9, but we also, if he falls to us, we're jumping all over.
Yep. He's a great running back 4. I could maybe understand a running back 3, but he's much more of a safer pick as your running back 4 at this point.
For sure.
So, that was Lucas's picks, and now I will touch on the rest of my picks in the draft. Cam touched on it earlier. I took Dallas Goedert in the 9th round, and if you remember last episode, I took Noah Fant in the 7th, and Goddard was solely a makeup pick because of that Fant, mistake.
Yep.
So then in round 10, I took Ryan Tannehill, and I think Tannehill in the 10th round is
great value.
That's amazing. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is at the bottom of my
QB1.
Yeah, QB1 rankings. So to get him in the 10th, now with Julio, when last year he finished top 10 without Julio, I think that's too good.
I'm going to repeat a stat that I said on an earlier one. You weren't here, but I think since when he took over after Mariota left, he was quarterback 2 for the rest of that season. And then last year, whenever he had A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith, and Derrick Henry all on the field at the same time, quarterback 3. So not saying this, I'm not saying he's quarterback 2 or 3 again. I'm gonna pump the brakes on that.
Pump it.
But he has proven that he can put up numbers when he has those guys. And I'm gonna be honest, I like Anthony Fisker and Julio Jones more than I like Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis. So
absolutely.
I think, and then you give A.J. Brown another season.
Yeah,
much better weapon. Watch out.
Yeah, and I mean they have. I know this guy that I'm about to mention. He's now worth taking in your fantasy drafts or anything. But Josh Reynolds was also the wide receiver 3 for the Rams for the past couple of years, and a lot of people were actually kind of optimistic about him that he could actually kind of burst out a little bit. Never really did with the Rams, but he is no scrub of a wide receiver 3. So that's another weapon for him to use. So
he boosts the rest of his team, but he's not a guy that you're going to take.
Yep, exactly. So then in round 11, I took Gus Edwards, the running back 2, I guess, for Baltimore. Then round 12, I found Henry Ruggs. Was still available, so I grabbed him. Round 13, Latavius Murray. Round 14, then I took my QB2 in Carson Wentz, and I finished up my team then with Washington as my defense and Jason Myers, the kicker for Seattle. The 2 guys I was most excited about. I'll start with Henry Ruggs. There's really no statistical evidence for him being a good value pick in round 12, but the reason that he figures to be the top wide receiver option in Las Vegas, to grab that in round 12, I think one is highly unlikely because also ESPN has them inside like the top 100 players. So round 12 is probably the latest that you'll see him. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of this mock draft, I was more than glad to grab him in round 12. But like I said, he figures to be the top pass catching option for Derek Carr this year.
Yeah.
In round 12, that's more than I could ask for. And the second guy that I was really excited about was Gus Edwards. And we touched on the handcuff running backs already. But if I were to take a handcuff running back, Gus Edwards is my number one option. And I looked at his stats last year compared to, let's say, your Alexander Madisons of the world, your Latavius Murray's, who I actually later grabbed, but I digress. Tony Pollard, Philip Lindsay. Philip Lindsay was kind of beat up last year, so he doesn't really compare in this ranking. But essentially, out of all those guys that I listed, Gus Edwards had the second most carries, the most rushing yards, and the most rushing touchdowns. So definitely not going to be someone that I start right away, or probably at all, unless I'm that desperate of a plug and play for maybe a week. But if Dobbins, somehow picks up an injury or something like that, I think Gus Edwards fits right into that Dobbins role of that goal line running back threat, because
his efficiency is insane too.
Yeah. I mean, Lamar seems to be that early down design runner for the Ravens. So with Edwards, behind Dobbins, I think it's more than a good pick as my running back four. So
for sure.
Now with that, I got a couple questions for you, Cameron.
All right.
About just more strategy, more, where do you find value when you're in a predicament in your drafts?
Definitely.
And the first one, maybe isn't so much strategy, more so it's just because these are players that we've talked about and we're not super high on, but some other people are. ESPN. So DeAndre Swift is ranked as the 22nd best player available on ESPN, and that's a running back 15. And Miles Sanders is ranked at number 23, running back 16. Knowing, how you feel about those guys, where would you rather place them on ESPN's big board?
So let me be honest about DeAndre Swift. I really, really, really want to like DeAndre Swift. Like
we all do.
And he's got so much skill. So he's a guy that I still think could, despite what everyone's saying, he could still be that like a top tier run.
Yes.
Kind of fit into that like second tier. But I would probably move him back. They got Dobbins at 29. Probably move him back there and probably move Clyde Edwards-Helaire up to where he is at. Because they got Clyde Edwards-Helaire running back 17 down at 28 overall. Probably move Edwards-Helaire up. I would drop Miles Sanders back to the 5th round. Probably between pick 50 and 58. There's a lot. That would put him at running back 23, 24. And it's just, that's 100% preference. I don't think he's the guy. I just don't. I think Jalen Hurts is going to take away too many rushing attempts. I think that the rest of there's going to be I think it's going to be a crowded backfield.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say that they don't think any of those guys are a real threat. I just do. I don't think that Miles Sanders has shown that he's good enough to command that backfield by himself.
Yeah.
And so I would personally move him back to round 5. That's where I would take Miles Sanders. But he's going in our draft, he went round 3, pick 9. He went out of Julio, Allen Robinson, Lamar Jackson, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, and Chris Carson.
That's too high.
And that is way too high for me.
But
that's where ESPN has him ranked. ESPN has him going in round 2.
Yeah.
And I won't touch him until round 5. That's if I'm being honest.
Easily. Yeah. And I think if I'm the team that is like, okay, I see Sanders is falling and I need a running back too.
Yeah.
I will still pass over Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
I like the only time that I'll take Sanders is if he's my running back 3, right?
Yeah.
And even then, it's still a like, do I really want to? So That's pretty interesting.
Yes.
And I think it like you said, DeAndre Swift has every tool possible
Yes.
to still be the prominent back in that Lions backfield.
Yes.
There's just some cautiousness that we use with Swift.
And I think it shows that you have to have your own rankings.
Yes.
Or at least rankings of someone that you really trust. Like I love ESPN. I go off the rankings a lot, but I don't always like they're not like gospel per se. Like they're not something that I'm gonna like put my whole heart and soul in and be like, this is what I trust. Like that's why we create our own rankings, is because like we definitely use this to create our rankings, but at the same time, like we use our rankings because that's how we're gonna pick.
Right.
And then we don't get caught up in this cheat sheet.
Yep. And yeah, full transparency, we got caught up in the sleeper big
all
board.
three of us did. You heard it.
And that just proves that we needed our own rankings in front of us, because
the second you try and go off the big board, you forget about one or two players and you're kicking yourself later for not taking them.
Yep. So another question I've got for you.
For sure.
I'm in need of a flex player right now. Do I take Juju Smith-Schuster or do I take Brandon Cooks?
Ooh. See, I'm going Brandon Cooks here. And I am taking Brandon Cooks because he is going to be wide receiver 1 in that offense.
Yep.
He is going to be the main target. Brandon Cooks is good.
He is.
Brandon Cooks has put up 1,000 yards like 6 out of 7 seasons or something like that. Like he's always good, and I think he's just so underrated because he's moved around so many times. Like he's not that staple. He's never been like flashy like 1,500 yards, but he's always been like 1,100 yards receiving. And I don't think Juju might touch that, but he's that wide receiver 3, maybe 2 in that offense. I know he finishes 19 last year, but he just did not show any consistency.
Yeah.
And I think Brandon Cooks just has like the opportunity for so much more volume in that offense, and I think that's why I would take it in there. It is very close though.
Yeah. Even with Deshaun Watson, let's say if Watson's out for the year, you still taking Cooks then?
See, then I'm probably then it'd be really close. I'd probably actually avoid both of them, if I'm being honest. That's just personally. If I had to take one, maybe I then start thinking Juju, just because I know that I think his floor is higher than Cooks. But it might not be, actually, so I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Yeah, because Juju seems to be that third mouth to feed down the offense now with Najee there.
Yeah.
With Brandon Cooks, he's the first option to go to. It's hard to imagine what that offense will look like with Tyrod Taylor under center, but if I'm completely honest as well, I'm probably going to avoid these two guys and probably take another running back then, or a quarterback, or maybe even a tight end
for sure.
If those are the two guys,
the only 2 wide receivers in that,
yeah. So it's pretty interesting though. That's that one makes you think, because you're like, those are really tricky situations to figure out. So, who do you think will, if you need a wide receiver 2?
Okay.
Would you rather have Julio Jones or Kenny Golladay?
Ooh. See, I got Golladay higher, but it's so. Julio's ceiling is so much higher. I think it depends on who I got before. If I got wide receivers, like if I took a Justin Jefferson or something like that, I honestly think I'd go Golladay, just because I think because like Julio, the wheels could just fall off for Julio.
Yep.
But if I got like a Keenan Allen or a Michael Thomas, even a Michael Thomas, I still really trust, or a Devontae Adams or something like that.
Yeah.
I think I go Julio here just because I think the ceiling's higher. I didn't in our mock draft, or no, I didn't have a choice because Kenny Golladay went around later.
Yep.
But if they're like back to back, I'm probably gonna actually end up going Julio just off the ceiling, unless I don't have any like guys I trust. Because I know a lot of people don't trust Kenny Golladay this year, but I do.
Yeah.
So that would be my reasoning behind that, of taking Kenny Golladay before Julio.
Sure. Yeah. And so just to summarize, it really depends on what your wide receiver situation is at that moment, right? If you have Tyreek or Devontae,
if I got a top 5, top 6, 7 guy,
then you would take Julio just because you're already guaranteed of a higher ceiling.
Yes, because then I could potentially have 2 top 5 wide receivers.
Right. But if you have, let's say, a Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, probably
AJ Brown,
then you would probably take Kenny just because he's his floor is higher.
I think so.
But Julio's ceiling is higher.
See, I struggle with that. I think in the moment I probably end up taking Julio.
Yeah.
Just because like passing up on Julio Jones, like just knowing how good he could be would be really tough.
Yeah. And I mean, if people criticize you for taking Julio Jones, if he, like, let's say has a disaster of a season, they obviously don't really know what they're talking about because Julio has finished in the top 5 multiple seasons for wide receivers. So,
and I think I'd rather have that risk of Julio just knowing. Yeah.
Julio's kind of bio or profile bio, we'll say, is high risk, high reward.
Yes. And
if you want to take that risk, go ahead. No one's going to stop you from doing it. But just, I don't think it's much of a guarantee of a top 10, top 5 campaign as he's done in the past.
Yes.
So, let's do one more question, then we'll move on to mailbag.
All right. Mailbag.
Last 2 running backs before the dreaded running back drop off.
Yes.
Who are you taking, Josh Jacobs or Myles Gaskin?
I'm taking Myles Gaskins, and that's just like I think last year I definitely was taking Josh Jacobs, and it's just because like Jacobs, I mean just volume is king last year, but Kenyon Drake's gonna cut in that volume. His efficiency has been dreadful, and he's just not an effect in the passing game. Whereas Myles Gaskins was really effective in the passing game. That's where he did most of his damage, and I mean, Tua is still so young. He's going to need to check down. And so I think Gaskin's going to be his guy.
Yeah.
So that's where I take Gaskin. I know you're high on Gaskin too.
Yep.
So I'd assume you're probably the same.
Yeah. Well, and
I think I also have Jacobs ahead of Gaskin, but I think if it came down to the 2, I just would like Gaskin more on my team.
Yeah. Yep. And something that I look at when I look at running backs, this is something that I got from another YouTuber that does fantasy football coverage and stuff. Basically, when you're drafting a running back, you're also drafting their offensive line, right? Yeah. So when you think offensive line, you think of surefire offensive lines like Indy's, like Cleveland's, like Baltimore's, or who would be another one? Dallas even. Yeah. Like that's something to at least remember when you're drafting a running back. Remember whose offensive line or what offensive line they have in front of them. Las Vegas now
just destroyed their O-line.
Yeah, they have one returning starter.
Oh my gosh, they just destroyed it.
It's completely blew it up. Yeah, it's all brand new.
Is it just Richie Incognito?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that's just the only guy. So
yikes.
Yeah, and then with the Dolphins, they have a whole bunch of young pieces. They added a tackle from Notre Dame in the draft. They took a tackle last year. And they already had pieces already in that offensive line.
For sure.
So that's a growing offensive line. So I would rather bet on that offensive line than Las Vegas's offensive line.
100%.
So. All right. Well, let's move on to the mailbag. Mailbag. So this question, I should have remembered what this guy's handle is. It's Dakota or Dakota.
Is that him?
I think this is him. I think that's him.
What was the question?
Thoughts on all the hype surrounding Logan Thomas?
No, this one's a different guy.
This is a different one.
This is Neil. Neil's already asked this question before.
Oh, that's right.
Neil 1254.
I'm such a bad host.
That's all right. Anyway, no. You're good. You're good.
I'm a little rusty. We'll say that. Yes, but thoughts on all the hype surrounding Logan Thomas?
Well, we heard it last week. I'm not one of those ones that's hyped on Logan Thomas.
Tight end, what, 12?
I got a tight end 15.
No,
Gerald Everett's tight end 12, baby.
Oh, man.
I mean, I think he's a good wide receiver and a good offense, but, I mean, Fitzpatrick isn't known for throwing to that tight end. I'll let you answer on this one. I'm just not.
I need to adjust my tight end rankings. I feel like I say that every week.
Yes,
Lucas, we need you back. All that I come back to is that it's not Alex Smith throwing in the ball anymore.
We love Alex Smith. But
yeah,
the story was amazing.
What a guy, dude. I mean, tough as bone, or tough as nails, and tough as bones. How is that? How am I hosting? I can't.
Who let him in?
Who let me? Oh my goodness! you will find me on the outskirts of town next episode.
It's gonna be a one-man show. By the end
It
of
will
this.
be. No, but like I said, with Ryan Fitzpatrick now throwing in the ball, and adding Curtis Samuel, and now Antonio Gibson supposedly having a bigger role in the offense, I just think he gets squeezed out a bit. I think he'll still get maybe 3-4 catches a game, but he's going to be like the very bottom of starting tight ends.
Yeah.
Like first one to drop if you find a better tight end.
Yeah. It'll be a tough one.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, he's still got a lot of potential to be good. Like,
This is true.
None of us are counting him out. I just don't think any of us are like super hyped.
Yeah, and I mean, I think of 3 tight ends right off the bat that I'd rather have in front of Logan Thomas.
After the top 6 you're talking about?
Yes. Yep. I would rather have Dallas Goedert, Mike Gesicki, and probably Robert Tonyan.
Would you take Fant?
No.
I drafted him high, but I wouldn't take him.
Yeah, no. With Fant, I'll touch on Fant real quick. That's my fault. I'll touch on Fant real quick. Cortland Sutton is back, and their wide receiver room. Did you know that Tim Patrick didn't have any drops last year? Did you know that?
Opposite of Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, the complete opposite. So there's 4 good targets. There's Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and Tim Patrick. And now you add Javonte Williams, who figures to be this up and next running back for the team, but you still already have Melvin Gordon. So
and you could have really bad quarterback play with Drew Lock. So
like I'm fading Logan Thomas and Fant after this episode. So
great question, Neil.
Great question. Thank you for bringing this up. This needs to be talked about more. Our next question, and I believe our last question.
Yep, last one.
Comes from Alan Jackson Flipped. Did I say that correctly?
I think so.
I think I said that right.
If not, we disrespect him.
Yeah, we we totally disrespected him if we got that wrong. But who are your priority picks in dynasty leagues?
In dynasty leagues? So when I'm thinking dynasty, my wide receivers, I'm kind of thinking anyone 29 and younger who's still really good. I think that cutoff kind of starts around that 31, 32 age. Yep. And when I'm thinking I'm starting a dynasty league, I'm thinking guys I can have for 3 years and be solid. Because that means I can have 2 good years for sure on my team, and then maybe I trade them after that, predicting that they have 1 more year. So I'm looking at any wide receivers that are younger than that who I think are still really good. Running backs, that 28 is kind of been seeming like the top. I mean, like if anybody's going to do it, it's probably going to be Derrick Henry to run past 20. I mean, the guy's just an absolute beast.
Monster.
But that's kind of where I am. I'm looking at rookies. For me, when I'm targeting running backs, it's those second-year running backs. It's the guys I really like. I really like CEH, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
Who else am I forgetting that's in that? J.K. Dobbins. You know, I really like these guys, and a lot of these guys struggled last year because they had no offseason.
Right.
They had no time to prepare. And I think that they're going to be really good this year. And if you look at like a Dalvin Cook, I mean, he took 2-3 years to really get going. Now he's running back too. So you're kind of picking one of these guys like, all right, this could be that next guy that kind of fill in that top 3.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just 3 guys just to give off, something to chew on.
Yep.
Zach Moss, Robbie Anderson, and Laviska Shenault.
Okay.
Zach Moss seems to be taking over that Bills backfield, and I think eventually defenses are going to figure out that offense without a run game.
Right.
So I think Zach Moss steps in and kind of takes over that backfield this year or, even next year. Robbie Anderson, I think we all agree should be the wide receiver 1 on the Panthers.
We like him more than DJ Moore.
We like him more than DJ Moore.
At least us two.
Yes.
We won't speak for Lucas.
Yeah, we won't. Yeah, we can't do that. Not when he's not here. But yeah, Robbie Anderson, I think he just signed in Carolina last year.
Yeah.
So he has 3 years left on his deal, and now he has what I think a lot of people would argue is an upgrade at QB. It's not much of an upgrade, but a lot of people would rather have Sam Darnold than Teddy as their quarterback. So he's another guy. And then Laviska Shenault, he kind of came on towards the end of last year. Now he's in new offense. So he's got a kind of a fresh start.
Yeah.
You never really want to have a fresh start for going into your sophomore year. But the word around camp, at least from the Jaguars, is that Laviska is kind of slowly taking over wide receiver 1 duties from DJ Chark. So,
I got one more. Jackson, I know you're Jackson's a friend of the podcast, by the way.
Big friend.
I know you're a Steelers fan, so the guy I'll give you is Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
Going into year 3, we all really like him. He's still falling even in dynasty leagues. He's a guy I would really be targeting.
Yep. Now, let's say one guy in normal leagues or redraft leagues who outside of the first round.
Outside the first, you know who I'm gonna say? I'm gonna pick a guy later who I'm really targeting, and that's Chris Carson.
Oh, okay.
I think Chris Carson's proven when he's healthy. That's the problem, is he hasn't stayed healthy, but when he's healthy, he can put up top 5 running back numbers.
Yeah, that's true.
He's ridiculous in that offense, and I don't know if you've seen the pictures of him this offseason, but he looks just jacked. And so he's a guy. I mean, he's fallen 4th. I mean, even early 5th, I've seen him fall. So he's a guy that I'm really targeting the redrafts.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'll go down that same road. Curtis Samuel. I talked about him a couple episodes ago.
Was it last? Oh no, 2 episodes.
2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Would have been 2 episodes ago, but he kind of broke out last year.
Yes.
Not necessarily in the way that everyone likes to think of a top 10 breakout performance, but according to previous years, going from triple-digit wide receiver finish to his rookie year, sophomore year was a wide receiver 40 range.
Mm-hmm.
And then this past year, he broke into the top 25. I think, yes, he did switch teams, but I think he is entering another situation that he was just in. So
For sure.
I think grabbing him as a potential flex, if I need it, more so as a wide receiver 4, I would be beyond thrilled if I had him there. So
definitely.
With that, we will wrap up this episode. Man, I really enjoy these mock draft episodes.
I love them. I could do them every week.
I don't want to admit how many I do, but I do quite a few every day.
You do enough.
Do enough. So yeah, be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below.
Yes, leave us comments. We want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Tell us if we're doing bad.
Yeah, please. Actually, the feedback would actually kind of help.
Yeah,
I know I'm a bad host, so maybe you leave out those comments. But yeah, go ahead and follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. Lucas is usually our handle guy.
Yes,
we're missing that. But
it has something with FF Fellas football.
If you just search Fantasy Football Fellas, you'll find us.
We'll be there.
We'll be there. Don't worry.
There.
Yeah.
We have the triple F as our logo. We'll be there.
You can't miss us. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere
Apple Podcasts,
anywhere you can watch or get your podcast, we are there. So with that, thanks for tuning in.
Yep.
And we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Deuces.